The liturgy is central to what it means to be Catholic. Recently, the liturgy has been in the news. In July of 2021, Pope Francis released an apostolic letter issued motu proprio called Traditionis custodes that restricted the celebration of the Tridentine Mass of the Roman Rite, known as the traditional Latin Mass. In June of 2022, Pope Francis published Desiderio, desideravi, reaffirming the importance of ecclesial communion around the rite that emerged from the post-conciliar liturgical reform. But what is liturgy exactly? How do we define the modes of ritual that anchor how we worship? And when did the liturgy we see and hear in the Mass today find its present form?
Es una pregunta difícil. La liturgia.
It is a difficult question. Liturgy, as you well know, encompasses so many aspects. But in a simple way, we could say that liturgy fundamentally has to do with salvation, with that great desire we all have to be saved. And concretely with the modality with which the Lord gives his salvation, which is the ritual modality. That is to say, in a very intuitive way, when we speak of liturgy, we speak of forms of ritual prayer.
De formas de oración ritual.
Within the development of liturgy, it's important to understand when and how the liturgy became recognizably Christian.
El caso del Antiguo Testamento es particular porque
The case of the Old Testament is particular because, as you know, especially after Sinai, after the covenant, in that particular covenant with Sinai, the Lord will determine concrete ways in which Israel will worship the Lord. This means that these ritual forms cease to be an expression of what certain men and women of a specific culture context have and try to put into practice in order to relate to God and become a gift from God. Perhaps the first great novelty of Old Testament worship, of the ritual forms of worship in the Old Testament, is that they have been given by God Himself. We begin to see that these forms begin to be Christian when they are celebrated on the basis of Jesus' ritual commands. What does this mean? If we read the Gospel carefully, we will see that Jesus, when He establishes His new covenant, invites the Church to perform also a series of ritual gestures. For example, do these in remembrance of me, forgive sins, baptize. These ritual commands are the core of the liturgical actions that we have today in the Church.
El núcleo de las acciones litúrgicas que tenemos hoy en la Iglesia.
Given the current conversations surrounding the liturgy and the Holy Father's intentions when restricting access to the traditional Latin Mass, we spoke with Cardinal Gerhard Ludwig Müller, former prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith.
I think the mistake from the beginning was to link the old rite of the Mass with the question of recognizing the Council. This does not contradict itself in any way, because although I have little to do with the old form of the liturgy, I must nevertheless say objectively that this is a question of disciplines, of the order of the Church, and not of the substance of the faith. It is quite clear that the Holy Mass in the various forms in which it has been celebrated historically, but in the currently valid rites, I think there are 23 rites in the Church, with the many subredens. It is clear that the Mass in all these different forms is the same according to its substance, as it goes back to Christ and has also been authentically interpreted in the course of Church history, in the councils, and as it belongs to the basic stock of the Catholic faith. I don't think you should have opened this sidebar at all, because what it is at stake in this world today are quite different things. About the gospel in general, about Christianity in a secularized environment, where it is opposed by efforts of de-Christianization.
With the disruption that the COVID pandemic created, making it difficult and dangerous for the faithful to assemble and receive the sacraments, and the proliferation of online technologies and streaming services, the Church has found itself at a crossroads. Many are asking and seeking possibilities to experience the liturgy virtually.
Sí, actualmente
At present, especially after the COVID pandemic, we are facing a great challenge within the Catholic Church, a process that in other churches or in other communities has already been underway for a couple of decades, which is the presence of liturgy or alleged liturgical actions on the internet. Here, it is necessary to distinguish fundamentally different possibilities. One thing is the retransmission of a liturgical action that takes place in a church, for example, which can be followed from home. And another reality are the liturgical actions taught to be participated through internet. That is to say, there is no fixed place, there is no fixed church, or only a part of the communities in the church, and the rest of the participants are in their homes.
Participantes están en sus casas.
The timeless beauty and salvific grace that the liturgy provides is what people are looking for in these times of difficulty and confusion.